Welcome into the Locked On Knicks podcast. On today's episode, we talk about the rise of OG Anunoby, the struggles of Mikal Bridges, and why the Knicks need both of them to win a championship.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's up, guys? You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. I want to remind you that Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. I also want to remind you, your favorite podcast now has a newsletter introducing the Locked On Knicks daily newsletter, the one-stop shop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Get writing every single day from Alex and I, our team of national writers, and of course, your favorite Australian fantasy basketball expert, Josh Lloyd. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com. And start your day with the all-new free Locked On Knicks newsletter. We're going to get into it today on the Knicks two wings. OG Anunoby ascending. Mikal Bridges, I don't want to say descending, but he's been descending a little bit. How he can get things right. We'll talk about all that in just a sec. But first, I want to thank you for listening to Locked On Knicks every day and being an everydayer. We're with you 5 days a week. If you want to join us 5 days a week, be sure to subscribe. Hit that notifications bell. In the comments, tell us your favorite element of OG Anunoby's game this year. What gets you the most excited? And what you're most frustrated about with Mikal Bridges so far. I'm Gavin Schall, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster. I'm also the host of the Saturday edition of the Locked On NBA podcast, so you can catch me there. And I was lucky enough to be join my buddy XJ on the Hot Hand Theory podcast. I believe coming out a little later today, so be sure to check that out. But if you don't get a chance to check it out, I'm going to be talking about a lot of similar stuff on this one. We start off our journey with OG Anunoby, who is having just an incredible season. I would argue a borderline all-NBA season. Over his last 9 games, he's averaging 23 points, 6 rebounds, a couple of assists a game, shooting 58% from the field, 46% from 3, 85% from the foul line. He scored at least 24 points in 6 of those 9 games. And if you remember this offseason, we had Knicks Film School's DJ Zulo on to do a preview episode of OG's season. And I was asking DJ, and I don't really think I had the vision fully formed in my head yet. But I was saying, what do you think it looks like if OG Anunoby makes a leap on the offensive end? And DJ was saying, look, there are all these areas on the margins that he can certainly get better, right? And one of the things, if I'm remembering correctly, he mentioned was shooting wing threes, which we'll get back to in a sec. He's certainly gotten a lot better at. But he was essentially saying, like, he doesn't think that OG basically had the functional handle to be a substantially improved scorer compared to what he was in the past. And I kind of tried to make a counter argument, and I don't think it was, again, I don't think it was fully fleshed out. But now I see the vision because it's happening right in front of me. So anyone could see the vision. And it was not necessarily OG becoming like this on-ball Kawhi Leonard-esque wing, which if you looked at the games where he was scalding hot, like, not that he was ever going to be that good, right? Like, Kawhi is an all-time historical outlier mid-range scorer and just like even compared to OG, just a different level of freak athlete. But I go back to that game, what was it, game 3 against the Pacers, game 2 against the Pacers, where he hurt his hamstring and he had 28 points in the first half. I was like, can we just bottle that level of aggressiveness? And I think that is what I was focused on, where even if OG was not going to spend more time on the ball, even if his handle was not going to substantially improve, if you could just fully leverage his shooting ability, his physicality, and have him in constant attack mode, which is something that he has been steadily developing over the course of his career. I think, what was it, the first 5 years of his career? It was in the KFS newsletter today. For 6 years of his career, he improved his scoring average. And he is someone who, like, the notion with OG, when we talked to Sean Woodley of Locked On Raptors after the Knicks initially made the trade, was that he wanted a bigger role. It was that he wanted to do more. And I just wanted that concentrated, right? Because in his first run of playing the Knicks, he was amazing. We were winning a ton of games. His offensive output was just a little inconsistent and frankly was limited, right? It was a lot of corner threes. It was some dunks in transition. And then you would see these glimpses, right, of him creating in the mid-range, in the half court, of him cutting back door for a dunk. And you're like, if you could just ramp all this up to 10, you have an all-star here. And now the Knicks have an all-star here. That is what is so exciting about this. Like the single biggest development to me is the non-corner threes, right? Because he was a talented three-point shooter, but he was a limited three-point shooter. He was elite from the corners. His second year in the NBA, he had this great season shooting from the wings and shooting from up top. I think hitting about 42% that season on decent volume. And then it all went away, right? Like he could not shoot anywhere other than the corners. This season, he's gone from hitting 32% of his non-corner threes to 43% of his non-corner threes. That's an 11% jump. That is 92nd percentile for all wings in the NBA. That is ridiculous. The other area he's really weaponizing is it was the question I thought was a really exciting one for the Knicks coming into the year. Where were other teams going to hide their small guards, right? Because you unless you're the Celtics, unless you're the Thunder, there is not really a clean answer because those teams can say, hey, we're just going to put our small guards on Jalen Brunson because they are elite defenders, right? Like if you have a Shea who's not so small, if you have someone like Cason Wallace, if you have someone like Alex Caruso, if you have a Drew Holiday, if you have a Derek White, right? They could guard Jalen, they could guard Mikal Bridges, they could guard Josh Hart. Not gonna have a huge issue. Obviously, with Jalen, they'll have the issue that every team has, that he's just an incredible scorer. But as far as like that is not an obvious mismatch for the Knicks to go at. Those teams have solutions. Basically, no other team in the NBA has a clean solution to that. You could try to put them on Mikal, but he's just been raining those turnaround jumpers on them, right? And right now, we'll get into this in a sec, you'd be welcoming him to the one part of his game that he is super comfortable with. You could put them on Josh Hart. He's going to run a pick and roll with Karl Anthony Towns. And as we've seen, like that is a fantastic way to punish it because those guards cannot really switch onto Karl Anthony Towns. And Hart is more than capable if you try to hedge it, you try to like do something weird, like and kind of keep your big in the vicinity. He can turn the corner, he can get all the way to the rim and finish. But perhaps the most deadly one is putting a guard on OG Anunoby because he has just brutalized those matchups. And it's something from the get-go I have wanted to see from OG Anunoby, right? Get a guard on you, put him under the rim. You are 6'8", 240 pounds, one of the strongest players in the league, one of the physically strongest players in the league, and he's been doing that all year. Again, another great stat from the KFS newsletter today. 1.32 points per field goal attempt out of a post-up. That is sixth highest among the 50 most frequent post-up players in the NBA. The only players that have taken more shots than OG and are more efficient from Jonathan Macri, Jaylen Brown and Jimmy Butler. So he has been a monster as a post-up threat, right? That 1.32, I don't have the exact math of, that's the equivalent of shooting about 65% on post-ups. That is ridiculous. And then the other big thing is his ability to dunk the basketball, right? And the Knicks, obviously a lot of them are coming in transition. The Knicks had that with Obi Toppin. They had that with RJ Barrett. But they have not had a guy who gets dunks in the half court like OG Anunoby. And we are seeing a transcendent season from him in that respect. Out of the top 20 players with the most dunks in the NBA, OG Anunoby is the only guy who is pretty much exclusively a wing, right? He is ninth in the NBA in dunks, or at least, sorry, he was ninth after the Nuggets game. So not including last night's game. He was ninth in the NBA in dunks. The only other sort of wing in there is Jalen Williams, who's 20th. And as XJ pointed out when I said the stat on his pod, he's been playing a lot of center this year. So OG Anunoby is a borderline unique threat at the basket for any non-big man in the entire league. And you're seeing the Knicks utilize that in different ways now. First of all, they maybe did this earlier this year, but I'm not sure. They used him as a screener with Jalen Brunson. And this is something that Karl Anthony Towns opens up to you, right? When you were playing with Mitchell Robinson, heck, to some extent, even when you were playing with Isaiah Hartenstein, you had a center hovering near the basket, which meant you couldn't really use your non-big players as true rollers, right? You could use them as short rollers like Josh Hart, where he had the option to then throw the lob to the big if the opposing center stepped up or spray it out to opposing shooters. but you couldn't use your non-centers as role guys trying to get all the way to the rim. With Karl-Anthony Towns, you can, because the big has to stay home on Towns. If not, that's an easy kick out to OG for an open three for a guy who's shooting nearly 50% from three-point range. When you do when you do stick with Karl-Anthony Towns, guess what happens with OG Anunoby, right? Rolling to the rim, last play of the first quarter of that Nuggets game, got a layup. I think it was over MPJ. You are also consistently tilting defenses now with Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns. And we are seeing more teams that are not capable of switching. And to me, that is sort of the big lingering question about this Knicks offense is like it has looked incredible over these last 5 games, but it's looked incredible all season when they haven't faced defenses that are capable of putting 2 defenders on Jalen and Cat that can switch the pick and roll, right? So that is a lingering question. You could say it's a lingering question even when OG is the screener, but I'm getting off topic. The point is when you don't face teams that can do that, they are often trapping Jalen in any kind of screening action. Heck, sometimes they're trapping Jalen just when he dribbles the ball up the court, and he has become such a good passer, and the reads have become so much easier because the Knicks are 5 out, and there's so much more room on the floor. Instead of having to read like this clogged toilet offense, Jalen can see the next pass, and he's just decisively, like when Jokic is just tilting a step towards Jalen, he's firing a bullet to the corner to OG. OG's immediately beating like the scramble closeout from Jokic, getting to the rim, and man, he is finishing just exceptionally well so far this season at the rim. That time it was over Michael Porter Jr. for an and one. There was a play later in the game where like the Knicks ran like a stagger screen with Harden Towns, like, and he's able to cut off the ball for dunks. Like he is just such an off the ball weapon because he has that cutting ability. And then we mentioned the wing shooting and what he's added there. Like I say the 43% number, maybe that doesn't mean a lot to you, but what you see on the, like just watching film of him is like, he has this great escape dribble where he uses the fact that he's built like a freaking alien and he's just so long and has like 7'2", 7'3" wingspan. Is it 7'4"? I don't know. And he just gets so much room. Again, it helps when someone's closing out, but even when someone isn't closing out, he's able to pump, take the one long escape dribble and get his shot off. And you are seeing him consistently against close contests, either that escape dribble to the side against the Suns on back-to-back plays, one dribble at the defender, snatch back, put it between the legs, step back, hit the three, right? And this is not like a Paul George, James Harden bag where he's doing crazy step backs, where he's flashing this insanely advanced handle. It's like these 1-2 dribble combos that let him get to his shot. And then even in the mid-range game, he has mastered the art of the push-off, right? We've seen it from Jordan for years. We saw it from Kobe for years. We've seen it from LeBron for years. OG Anunoby is not those guys. What he does have that he shares with those guys is he is insanely strong, and he can get away with subtle push-offs that don't look like much, but because he is such a freaking freak of nature, guys go flying back 5 feet, and it's part of the reason why. I mean, maybe just a hot start for him, but you see him shooting exceptionally well in the mid-range this season. He's 46% in the short mid-range this year. He has never been above the 37% mark in his career. Last season, he was at just 31%. Early in his career, 20%, 29%, 26%. He has gone from terrible as a short mid-range guy to someone who has some real touch there. 46%. I don't know if he's been working with Bridges. I don't know if he monstered Jalen Brunson, who's not shooting that well from that range this season. I don't know, but he is killing it from short mid-range this year, and that's because he's generating a lot of space when he goes on those runs. Obviously, the defense is incredible. We can get into when we talk all-stars. I don't think there's any question right now that OG Anunoby should be an all-star if that was given today. Do I think some of this will maybe fall off a little bit? Yeah, like I'm not quite sure the 43% from the wings is sustainable. The good news for OG when you talk about that number not being sustainable is like he hasn't shot it insanely well by his standard from corner threes. 41% on the year. That has ticked up lately. In the past, he's been 42%, 47%, 45%, and then 44% last season. So if he can up the corner three a little bit, even if you see a small reduction in the non-corner threes, where again, he's shooting, not only is he shooting 43%, it is the first season since 21-22 that he's even shooting above 31%. So maybe that falls off a tiny bit. Either way, he has clearly made an upgrade as a shooter. He's put the work in this offseason. And he's arguably been the Knicks' best player so far. So shout out to Shout out to OG Anunoby. He's been amazing. Next on Locked On Knicks, we talk Mikal Bridges. We will get into that in just a sec. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for high society. Now the resourceful individual of Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.25% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on IRA account contributions. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply for product-specific disclosures. Visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. All right, thanks for sticking with us here on Locked On Knicks. A reminder, I'm Gavin Schall, credentialed media member and your host of the, of course, Locked On Knicks podcast and the Saturday edition of the Locked On NBA podcast. So we talked about the highs of the wing position this year in OG Anunoby. Now we have to talk about the lows, and that is undoubtedly Mikal Bridges. So I've seen the comments, maybe stop mentioning every show that we traded 5 first-round picks for him. I kind of have to, right? like that was the decision the Knicks made. They went all in on this guy. I am not going to go down the revisionist history road and say I had an issue with it. I did not. I thought it was a steep price. I was wondering if Paul George would have been the better option, and based on how injured he's been in Philly, that is a no. That might have been the worst option, and it would not have left them the financial flexibility to go and get Towns. So overall, right decision there. Could you argue they would have been better off giving 2 picks for someone like a Jeremy Grant and maintaining more flexibility going forward? Maybe, but the reason I thought Mikal Bridges was the perfect move for the Knicks is playoff basketball is all about insulating weakness, right? It is other teams gobbling every bit of film there is on your team, capturing every number in terms of tendencies, where you struggle, where you exceed, and saying, all right, how can we make these weak points as painful for you as possible? How can we punish you every single second you put a bad defender on the floor, a non-3-point shooter on the floor, someone who's afraid to drive a closeout, someone who's unwilling or unable to pass the basketball, on and on and on. And NBA teams have gotten so good at that. The types of guys who could survive in playoff games and could survive in matchups are no longer palatable. You saw the Knicks lose series because they had Elfrid Payton out there, who is suddenly now, we talk about all-star. He might be an all-star. 20 assists the other night coming off the street. Shout out to Elfrid. But you put Elfrid Payton on the floor for 20 minutes. You play Josh Hart 2 years ago against the Miami Heat when he was afraid to shoot a 3 for, 20 minutes. Like, you lose games. You lose series. And the premise of Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby and why people wanted to trade 4 first-round picks for both of them was that they did not have a weakness. If you wanted to find a weakness, it was that they were not elite-level star scorers. And if you want to call that a weakness, then 400 out of the 450 players in the NBA have that weakness. And for Mikal, we weren't even sure if that was a weakness because he has shown flashes of being able to do that. He did that for 30 games on the Brooklyn Nets. If you remember, before he left Phoenix as the second option, when Chris Paul was falling off a little bit, he was putting up like 24 points a game on incredible efficiency night after night after night. The guy the Knicks traded for did not have a weakness. OG Anunoby did not have a weakness. And when you have 2 wings on the floor like that, you have a chance against the Celtics. You have a chance against the Thunder. You have a chance against the Mavericks. Hopefully you have a goddamn chance against the Cleveland Cavaliers who you beat 2 years ago, who all of a sudden look like world beaters. And that let you insulate Jalen Brunson a little bit, who is such an incredible strength for this team, but also is a target point for other teams. It lets you make the Karl Anthony Towns trade because you are saying we are bulletproof on the perimeter. And Mikal Bridges is so good navigating screens and chasing and rear view contesting, just like Drew Holiday and Derek White are for the Boston Celtics, that we can survive Karl Anthony Towns. And where the Knicks have not survived Karl Anthony Towns at times this year is because Mikal Bridges has failed so far this season, right? I'm not saying he's going to continue to. I'm not saying it's forever. I'm not saying he's a bad guy. He seems like a fantastic guy, but he has failed for what the New York Knicks need of him this season. Like I'll circle back on OG. Like OG is giving you everything from an offensive perspective you would have wanted from Mikal Bridges. If we were getting this season from Mikal Bridges that OG is putting up offensively, we would all be happy. We'd be clapping. We'd be applauding. And if Mikal can approach what OG's doing this year, which to be clear, like he's done at points in his career, maybe not quite the 3-point accuracy on volume that OG's having, but something pretty similar. Like the Knicks are cooking with gas, right? Like that would be incredible for this team. But in the reality we live in, like we have not gotten what we needed from Mikal Bridges so far. I go back, I watch film of the Nuggets game. I think I came on here and said I kind of liked his defense in the first half. There were some holes, right? There were two different plays where Jamal Murray just pretty much like once from a standstill, once off a Jokic screen, just toasted Mikal Bridges. And Jamal Murray, like you think we have issues with Mikal Bridges? Listen to Nuggets fans talk about Jamal Murray, right? They're in hell right now about Jamal Murray. He's not had a good season, and Mikal is just like not in his stance. He's upright. Like he just looks slow and unathletic at times getting around screens. And anything you want to say about Karl Anthony Towns, like he's at times looking worse because he's on an island 2-on-1. And for years watching the Knicks, we have taken for granted that both Mitchell Robinson, when he's healthy, and Isaiah Hartenstein, they can survive those 2-on-1s. Like I always remember Mitch breaking up Trae Young and Clint Capella lobs when that was the best pick and roll combo going in the NBA. And Mitch could stand there and could like just bait Trae into making the pass and then dive and get a hand on the ball or affect the jump from Clint Capella. Hartenstein could do similar things. You don't have that luxury with Karl Anthony Towns. You have a bunch of other luxuries, like he's shooting 50% from three. You weren't getting that from Mitch. You weren't getting that from Ihart. You weren't getting 13-point, 15 rebound games ever from those two guys. But they could single-handedly protect the Jalen Brunson and RJ Barrett, Julius Randle at times. Like they could make up for stuff. Towns is not that. And look, you need Towns at his best. He's at times sucked, like against the Jazz. He was really good against the Nuggets, and he contested everything at the rim, but at times, like, Mikal Bridges just let him down. And I'm trying to, like, in my mind, examine what this is, because initially this was just a 3-point shooting issue, right? This preseason, when he had that 1-for-19 stretch, you weren't really questioning the other aspects of Mikal's game. And you looked at the mid-range shooting, and you said, all right, well, he's still scoring the ball. He's still being efficient because he's shooting 60% in the mid-range, but you see what I would describe as a lack of confidence seeping into the rest of his game. And I go back to when he was questioned this preseason about his shot, and he was kind of talking like this. He was saying, yeah, I've kind of been messing with it since my second year. I've had a hitch since my second year, which was news to, I think, the bulk of us Knicks fans, because he has shot the ball great since he's been in the NBA. And we're like, why are you messing with your shot? You've been an amazing shooter. And it just feels like he is deeply, deeply, deeply in his own head right now. And that is leaching, that lack of confidence is leaching into the rest of his game. And you see it on his shot still, where I don't see that hitch necessarily every single time. But what I do see is him like changing his lower body and like kicking his legs out on his shot. And you could have played any level of basketball, like me as someone who didn't even play in high school. And you know that feeling of like when your shot's not going, you start doing weird stuff right after you shoot, right? You start like crouching down. You're like, all right, come on, go in. You start messing with your follow through. You start like tilting your head, tilting your body, almost like a golfer trying to will the ball into the hole. And we are seeing that consistently from Mikal. Just watch his lower body when he's not shooting well. I actually saw it last game against the Nuggets. So maybe that's a sign that he's getting a little bit more confident. But he's someone who does not want to shoot free throws right now, because on free throws, we've seen that hitch come out more than anywhere else, right? He's something like, I should have found his season totals before, but he started off this season something like 5 for 9 on free throws, and he just doesn't look confident shooting it, because I keep describing it as a power transfer issue. And that's what it is to me, where like he goes up to shoot. And as a shooter, it is all about energy transfer, right? You have your dip and you move the ball up, and it's energy, energy, energy from your legs, from your dip. And then Mikal gets to the apex and he pulls the ball back, and it kills all that energy. And you see it on his free throws. And because of that, I don't think he wants to get to the foul line right now. He hasn't shot a free throw in 6 games. He hasn't shot a free throw in 10 of the last 11 games. And I hear you who are saying, well, he's never had a high free throw rate. Sure, but he's also someone who is a high-level NBA athlete who aggressively attacks the basket. And that's how he's gotten, 4 free throws a game for pretty much his entire career. To take 10 of the last 11 games, that is not a physical problem to me. That is a psychological problem that he does not want to get to the rim. You saw him in transition early in that Denver game. Had Nikola Jokic, who's a good rim protector, who's smart, but is not like the fleetest of foot. Mikal, like the Suns version of Mikal, every time that is attacking the rim, that is a long Euro step, and that is finishing with a lefty lay. Instead, he's pulling up inside the elbow because he is terrified of going to the line. He does not want to take that shot right now. It is just not something he wants to do. He doesn't get to the rim because he doesn't want to get to the free throw line. Right now, 15% of his shots are coming at the rim. That is in the 5th percentile of all players in the league. And that fear, combined with the lack of three-point shooting, where he was 8 for 34 over his last 5 games, he's under 38% from the season. He is 0th. I'll say it again, 0th. I don't know if that's a word, but he's in the 0 percentile from outside the corners, 18%, shooting outside the corners from 3. For the first time in his career, all this has meant he is a negative on-off. Again, to my point earlier, he has been a positive impact player his entire NBA career. This season, a minus 6.8 net rating. Last season, he was minus 0.1, so he's technically a negative last year. I don't really count that because he was basically a net neutral on a Nets team that was relying on him to do way too much. This has to get fixed. How does it happen? I don't exactly know, but I'll take my best guess, and I'll tell you what it will ultimately look like next here on Locked On Knicks. But first, we want to tell you about our good friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats for live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I love doing this with football. It is so fun. Like if Lamar Jackson gets off to a hot start and you're like, you know what? I think he's going to go over 80 rushing yards in this game. And the fact that you can bet that live, it is exhilarating. And it lets you say, hey, I think I know more than FanDuel does. So if you want to get on the action, visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Again, that's $150. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Now, I want to tell you about some of our newest friends here at Locked On over at Built. If you're a renter, I'd start taking advantage of Built if I were you. Here's the thing. We earn points on groceries, travel, and practically everything else we buy. But we should also be earning points on rent, one of our biggest monthly expenses. Built changed the game by letting renters earn high-value points on rent and around their neighborhood. There's no cost to join Built, and as a member, you'll earn valuable points on rent and on your everyday spending. Built points can be transferred to your favorite hotels and airlines and even the ones you haven't heard of. There are over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels and properties around the world you can redeem your Built points towards. Points can also be redeemed towards a future rent payment and unique experiences that only Built members can access. So if you're not earning points on rent, my question is, why not? Start earning points on rent you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. That's joinbilt.com/LockedOnNBA. Make sure to use our URL so they know we sent you. Joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA to start earning points on rent payments today. All right, so we are going to wrap up this conversation on the wings. I see we have a couple comments, and we'll get to those at the very end. Basically, the way I'd wrap this up is like the Knicks ceiling is in Mikal Bridges finding himself, right? Like this team is too committed with those 5 first-round picks put out, and more importantly, in their roster construction, right? When you put Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns together. This goes back to my point on attacking weaknesses in the playoffs and how clinical teams are about doing that. You put out like a screaming red target, right? It is like a zombie apocalypse, and you said, I'm going to leave buckets of blood out around my house, right? That is how every other contender in the Eastern Conference looks at Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns on defense, right? Barbecue chicken. And you said, all right, but we have the two best zombie killers in the world. We have Mikal Bridges, we have OG Anunoby. You need Mikal Bridges to find himself on the defensive end. There was something going on in his head right now that I think will probably be resolved by playing through it. Personally, if I was Tom Thibodeau, I would say, hey, Mikal, you know what? The East is giving us a lot of wiggle room. Head to Hawaii for 2 weeks. Get your head right. Get up 1,000 shots a day. Outside of that, relax, enjoy yourself. Come back when you're in a better spot and you are not committed to screwing with your jump shot, because it was why I predicted preseason this issue would linger. If you start messing with your form, you better do it in the offseason, and you better have it solidified by the time the season starts, because we've seen it with a dozen NBA players in the past. You mess with your form against live bullets, against live defenses, it is going to get more and more screwed up, because you are not going to have the patience when you have the pressure every single night of carrying a franchise, or Mikal Bridges contributing to carrying a franchise. You are going to start trying to go back to what works, and that is your old form and your comfort spot, and you end up somewhere between your new form and your old form, and that is a disaster. And that's how you get the last two games where he's shooting like 5 for 20 from three, 4 for 20 from three. It hasn't been good. He needs to settle in and decide how he wants to shoot the basketball. And maybe we're trending that way. I think I've seen less of the hitch the last few games, and you hope once that shot starts falling down, he says, great, I can get to the rim because I'm okay shooting free throws. I can put in full effort defensively, and I'm not going to be in my head the whole time. It might not be an on-the-court thing. It might be an off-the-court thing, and you're just hoping it resolves itself over time, because the Knicks need Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby if they're going to play Karl Anthony Towns at the 5. The other path for the Knicks is you play some Mitchell Robinson at the 5. You play some Precious Achiuwa at the 5, and you lean all into defense. And if the Knicks do that, they can survive Mikal's defense a little more, but then you need his shooting even more. So you don't have two non-shooters on the floor, and you would be sacrificing some offense and like this high pace, like open air attack that is sweeping the NBA, right? If you listen closely to our pods, if you listen closely to anyone who covers this team, heck, if you just look at the Knicks official Twitter account, they are setting records every single game. They are being all in on being an offensive juggernaut, which is shocking because that is not the direction Tom Thibodeau has leaned throughout his career. But the pace is up, the three-point volume is up, and because of it, Jalen Brunson's assist rate is up dramatically to career high levels. And to beat the Celtics, to beat the Cavs, you are making a bet that our offense is so incredibly good that we can overcome the fact that these teams are way better defensively. Or you could go the other way and you can lean into defense with Mitch, with Precious, along Karl Anthony Towns, and you can make the bet this is going to make our defense excellent. Our offensive rebounding will be dominant again, and Towns is enough of a shooting upgrade over Julius Randle that we can survive this offensively. He's such a good offensive player that even if the looks are not as good, he can still excel. And we have enough shooting because OG's a 40% three-point shooter, and hopefully Mikal's a 40% three-point shooter again, that we can play super big and we can punish teams with our rebounding, and we are still explosive enough offensively to score with a team like the Celtics that is going to shoot 53s and shoot them very accurately, or score with a team like Cleveland, who is the only offense in the NBA better than the Knicks right now. So those are the two paths for the Knicks. I don't know what the right one is. I've made the case a couple of times that they'll need Mitchell Robinson this year. I think Precious Achiuwa is a good middle ground because you can play him unlike Mitch without totally sacrificing your spacing, because he can shoot the three a little bit. And unlike Mitch, he can operate similar to Hartenstein as a dribble handoff hub. He can still give you that rebounding. He can still give you some rim protection, if not Mitch level rim protection. And he can switch on defense, which is an option for this team. And I would argue, as Benji Ridholtz has a lot on the KFS pod, a necessity for this team to switch a little bit more on the defensive end, and honestly could unlock the best of Mikal and force him to get his motor up defensively by guarding one-on-one. I threw a lot at you guys on this episode. I don't know if you can tell. I have ADHD, so when I have solo pods, I'm a little all over the place. But I appreciate you tuning in because these are just kind of all my thoughts on the wings, and I wanted a place to empty them out. Shout out to all the comments we got from Nostalgic Knicks. Bless Gavin. Sherwin said, dude, before you talk bad about Bridges, please learn the game. Cat defense is killing Bridges. Bridges is getting double picks. He's guarding the best guard. Cat is awful at help defense. That is not really what's going on, Sherwin. I'm not saying Mikal has been worse than Cat. To be clear, Mikal has been fine on defense this year. You need him to be elite for the Knicks to get to their best point. And what I'm talking about with him is screen navigation, is chasing around the screen. And that is an area Mikal, with his length, with his ability, despite being a huge wing, to get skinny and work his way around screens, which nullifies Cat's negative impact just a bit. And he has not been great this year. So Sherwin, I'm going to tell you to learn the game a little bit. Shamik Boyd says, triple OG Anunoby, turn the TV off. They not like us. The Knicks are heating up. I love it. Nostalgic Nick says, Cat MVP, OG MIP, do 6-man, JB All-Star, love it. Shamik, yo, the Knicks about to be clicking on all cylinders. Can't wait till after the All-Star break. Let's go, Knicks. I cannot imagine a better note to end this pod on. That is it. Peace out. We'll talk to you tomorrow on Locked On Knicks.